Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love that. I love that point. I think that's great.
Thank you. That was a lot of info. I apologize. I usually don't talk this much on the podcast. It's best to have my guests usually. Welcome back, everybody, to Stop Interviewing, Start Selling. I'm your host, Philip Meyer, and today we have somebody I'm ecstatic to talk to. This is Kendall Anderson. Kendall's been a rep with UniFirst Corporation now for, 9 months?
Since January, so 8 months.
8 months. Wow. All right. So one of the reasons I'm really excited to talk to you, Kendall, because you actually reached out to me on LinkedIn. And you asked me some pointers about social media. You have this really awesome project that I can't wait to see your first video of what it's going to be. But why don't we start there? Let's talk about what your idea was, the reasoning behind it, and then we'll get into some questions. Okay. So tell me what do you got planned?
So I reached out to Philip. I watched his podcast. I am a fan. So I reached out to him because I personally get asked questions from my fellow teammates. I played softball. So a lot of teammates that are my age are interested in doing sales, and they get asked, what's a day in the life like? And, a lot of them like, hey, will you just update me throughout the day so I can see, what a day is like? I know for me, when I was wanting to get into sales, I wanted to do a ride along before I even thought about pursuing it. So I thought it would be a cool idea to do kind of a day in the life video vlog of being in sales and what it's like. So I reached out to Philip to see his thoughts.
That is so awesome. And let me just kind of reiterate some of the stuff that we talked about when you called. So I think it's a wonderful idea. And I think the term salesperson or saleswoman or salesman get used to have a negative connotation, right? Like a lot of people used to look at that and go, he's in sales or she's in sales. They must be slimy snakes. They're going to trick me into doing something or whatever. When in reality, I think the landscape has kind of changed. And I think social media has been a big part of that. So by you putting that out there, I think, especially from someone that was a softball player, that was an athlete, to me, that resonates because like as a former athlete myself, like in martial arts, I find that a lot of that dedication, a lot of that hard work will translate over to becoming a salesperson. And it's not really a career that people even think of as like a career. They think of it as like, oh, I'm going to go door to door and sell knives, or I'm going to go door to door and sell pest control or whatever. Not that those aren't viable options for people or a profitable job, but there's so many other companies out there, like the uniform industry, textiles, medical sales, like laser aesthetics is huge right now. There's a lot of opportunity for people just getting out of college.
Right. No, I definitely agree. And that was something I love, different aspects of business. I love learning about other businesses. So I knew that business to business sales was something I wanted to be a part of and learn about what other businesses are all about. And that's one of the, the things I love most about my job is just meeting other business owners and learning about how their business started and their creative ideas and just collaborating a little bit, seeing how we can help them out. That's been huge. And I think that a lot of teammates that even have ideas of, reach out to me wanting to start their own business. That's one of my biggest advice I could get. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give to them is go into sales first. I think that's probably one of the biggest skill sets, being able to sell. I mean, if you're going to run your own business, you have to be able to sell, and I think it's huge. So so just my short time of being here, I mean, I've learned so much, and I could not, if I was going to open a business now, knowing what I do now, I just think that the training has been next to none. So I couldn't imagine starting a business without having any sales experience.
Yeah, that like you hit on something that I've always felt is really profound with the sales game, and that is like if you know how to sell, that skill translates into everything. Like whether it's like your personal relationships, whether it's learning how to be tactful with arguments. You know, if you disagree with somebody, overcoming objections is a big thing to learn, right? Because you want to validate what that person's saying, but also be able to come back and say, well, this is my opinion. This is the reason I feel this way. And it may even in a time now where we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, like all these social media platforms that literally what they've done that I don't think LinkedIn has done is it has made people feel so much more important than they actually are, right? And as a result, I think the communication of our society is broken down. So by you learning that helps you to talk to everybody. So that's one thing. But number two, you said you can't imagine somebody starting a business that doesn't know how to sell. Me neither. I mean, I worked for a guy who like owned a financial advisory company. I was like an appointment setter. That's how I got my first kind of start into the sales realm of making phone calls. And he did not know how to motivate a salesperson, and that was really tough to go through that in that process. So kudos. By the way, like I had to mute my microphone because I was clapping. If I clap too loud, it'll lower my volume. So that was just awesome. I think you knocked it out of the park. No pun intended.
I just think it's so important, and even just the skill sets that I've learned with, I mean, that sales brings. I mean, even a plan, as simple as a plan, and just having a plan and time management has been huge. So, and I've always thought of myself as being phenomenal at time management because I was a Division I college athlete. So we had to be good at time management to keep up with school and sports. And then I hit the real world and saw how different it is, and just the importance of plan. And that's something that my manager has worked with me on, and I've come to realize I thought I was good at time management, but now I'm so much better at it now. So the importance of that, and just the little things even that come along with being in sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's back up a little bit, because I'm really curious to know, because I worked with somebody that was actually a Division I softball player for Oregon State. Shout out to Taylor Cotton, even though she won't come on my podcast. You're still awesome. But she actually was a rep with UniFirst. We worked side by side together in Sacramento. So I'm really curious to know from you, like, two things. Number one, how did you get into sales? Because I'm sure as a little girl growing up, you probably weren't like, I really want to be a salesperson one day, right? So how did you go from being like a D1 softball player to being a sales rep for UniFirst?
Well, there's a lot that goes into that. When I was younger, always wanted to be an entrepreneur, kind of be my own boss a little bit. And now that I'm in the real world, I realize that I need my manager more than anything. But that's kind of what got me into sales. I'm a big people person. I love talking to people. And that's really what got me into sales. I just, looked up to people around me that were in sales, and saw the love and the freedom that they had with that. And, with being, I guess, my personality, or I'm always, what's the next thing, going after the next big thing. I'm always not wanting to stay in the same spot and do the same thing. So, being behind a desk, working a 9 to 5 and doing the same thing every day just hasn't ever been something that interested me. So something about sales, being out and about and on the move and talking to people, it all checked the boxes for me. So that's that piece. And, thinking back to my college, relating it back to softball, and it all relates back to softball so much more than I could ever even imagine that it would, but it does. Looking back, and when I was getting recruited to go play softball, that was a lot of me having to sell to these coaches that, why should I pick you to come to my program? And growing up, I ended up being on a phenomenal travel ball team, and that was after I was recruited, and I realized, okay, it would have been so much easier if I started out on a phenomenal national travel softball team, because those coaches know every single coach, and basically they're your sales people, your coaching staff. But I didn't necessarily have that, so it was all me reaching out. And looking back on it, I remember, with the restrictions of how we were able to talk to coaches and everything, calling at specific times, and it just relates so much back to that's exactly what I was doing, as I was selling my skill set and me as a person to be a collegiate athlete. So I relate back to that more than anything.
Absolutely. But in addition to that, though, and I'm sure that you would agree, like, it's not just about, at that time, it wasn't just about you reaching out and saying I'm this. You actually had to walk the walk too, right?
Right.
I mean, you had to be able to perform. And I feel like that's something that gets lost among people that have never played sports, or at least have ever competed in anything, right? Because in sales, it's very competitive. And for you to go in front of a customer who is the CEO or president or like the owner of their own small company or business, and tell that customer, I'm confident that we can do this, we can change this for you, we can fix this problem, and then to not be able to show them how, or to deliver or prove it, it doesn't matter how great of a salesperson you are, you're going to fail, right? So what position did you play in softball?
Oh, well, I was a pitcher until I had shoulder surgery. So I was originally recruited as a pitcher, and then I had my shoulder surgery and ended up being put in the outfield because I was fast.
Okay.
So
All right.
I ended up playing outfield.
Wow. Okay. So when you pitch, it's so funny you're mentioning this, because Taylor, I hope you're listening to this podcast. But it was so funny because I remember her telling me that like softball pitches are very different than like baseball, right? Because in baseball you have like the curveball, and you have the breaking ball, whatever. But in softball, you guys have this terrifying pitch called the rise ball. Like, again, for those of you who have never gone up against like a softball pitcher, and you think you can hit a softball pitcher, you're wrong, because that was the first pitch. So back up a bit, Taylor and I challenged her. I said, hey, why don't we meet up at a baseball field and I'll try to hit your pitch. I'm not a baseball player. I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought it'd be fun, right? So she throws this rise ball, and I swear I heard the wind like slice as it rose up to my face, and it scared the hell out of me. So, like, was that your pitch, or what was your best pitch as a pitcher?
My best pitch was definitely a curveball.
Curveball.
And then drop ball was my second. I could throw a rise ball, but not as nasty as the rise balls that I faced in college. I mean, you want to talk about nasty pitches. I would strike out every single time on a rise ball, and everybody, when we would play our own team, like in scrimmages, everybody would throw me a rise ball, and I knew it was coming. And it's one of those that it's hard. It's hard to pitch. It's hard to read. It's hard to hit. It's incredibly hard to hit, and poor catcher back there too, hard to catch.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason I bring that up is because when you constantly face that adversity, because that's the other thing of being an athlete, right? Is you face adversity all the time. Like, you talk about having a shoulder surgery and being put into outfield, was that devastating to you?
Injuries is just, I was unfortunately in physical therapy my whole entire almost life. I
Ah,
mean, injuries was my biggest. I I face injuries left and right. I mean, um, my shoulder, it was not my worst injury, thank the Lord. But it was hard because, that was one of the biggest setbacks, I would say, because I was a pitcher, and at that time, as crazy as it sounds, when I was a freshman in high school, that was the time if you wanted to go Division 1, you had to get recruited for being a pitcher your freshman year. And I had my
oh,
surgery going into my sophomore year, and that I missed that time frame, and I was already getting looked at and recruited for pitching. So I was like, did I just lose my opportunity of playing Division 1 softball at that point? So I had to I had to hit the ground running hard with picking up a new position, and running with it, trust on my hitting, to get me recruited, and my speed. So that's something I've definitely faced, a lot of hardships with injuries, and just having to pick up and run with it. It's been a life skill that I've, like, it will always stay with me for sure.
yeah. So how do you think that for your teammates that are listening to this that are thinking about a career in sales, how do you relate that to your career with outside sales that you've had now?
I would say, I mean, it all relates to sales, but time management is huge for sure, and just I think competitiveness is something that if you're an athlete, at any level, you have that within you, and you're going to compete. Um, that's a huge one, and then being a good teammate. My sales team is phenomenal. I love my sales team. Um, Being able to call your fellow sales rep and ask them a question anytime, or just being able to talk about situations and kind of help other people too is huge. And, being able to overcome when you hit a wall or you're in a slump, that's probably the biggest. Just learning how to, you
Yeah.
know, almost fake it till you make it and come out of it, keep a positive mindset, and keep going. So I think, it all relates.
Yeah. Like, and I can tell you, like, because there's some people that go, oh, well, new reps, they get into slumps or whatever. They have weeks where they don't make a sale. So do veteran reps, like 100%. Like we still get into grooves where we're like, well, not really grooves, more of like a rut where we're like,
Right.
yeah, I feel like I can't close anything today. Like I like just one day, one week you can feel like you have this tongue made of gold and silver and just wisdom is pouring out and you're able to convince everybody to sign up with you. And then other weeks you're like, no one likes me. I suck at this. you know,
Right. No,
or
yeah, it's so
at least I
true.
do. Yeah. So, but would you say that like facing that adversity from like having to adapt from being a pitcher, being an outfielder, like that's helped you overcome that part of it?
Absolutely. And just even relating it back to, hitting, when you're going through a slump, it's you could be doing great one week, and then you go in a slump, and it's like you can't get out of it. It's so hard. And then all you want to do is go hit off of a tee, go practice more to get out of the slump, and you just have to grind, if you will, grind it out, and trust the process and get out of your head. That's the biggest thing, is getting out of your own head. And I would say it's so relatable to sales. You
Sure.
know, I myself I've hit a wall, and it's exactly, what they said, around this time frame, you'll hit a wall, and just staying true to the process has been the biggest key. And staying positive, relying on my teammates to help pull me out of it, and staying true to the process and grinding. I mean, hard work will pay off in the end. So it all relates back to hitting slump.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so maybe you can help with this, because I've heard that like hitting slumps can be legendarily, that's probably not a word. Legendarily, that's not a word, is it?
It might be.
Let's say it is. I'm gonna make it one. Uh, so like hitting slumps can be like legendarily difficult to get out from. So how did you overcome that with softball? And then when you do hit a slump in sales, how do you overcome that like now?
Ooh, mindset. I would say mindset is the biggest thing. But I always relate it back to, if you're, I mean, 300 is a phenomenal batting average.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great batting average, and you're failing over way over 50% of the time. So if you look at it like that, I mean, you just kind of have to give yourself some grace, trust the process, go back to the basics. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is in like softball, going back to the basics, going down to the roots and your fundamentals. That's really where it's going to help you out, and just don't think about it too much. And that's exactly what my manager now has given, the same exact advice she gives me. Don't think about it too much, have fun, and go back to, I mean, have those personal conversations with businesses. What you started when you came out of the gate and you were killing it. What were you doing then? Well, I was just having fun. I was relaxed. At that point, I was brand new. The pressure was not on, and I was just having fun. I was enjoying conversating with all these business owners, and that's one of the biggest things that's stuck with me and has helped me get out of it. It's just going back to the basics and having fun and loving what I'm doing. I think that's one of the biggest keys, is just doing that.
Yeah. Back to basics. I feel like that's a term that's used quite a bit, but I mean, the way that you put that, I think is very valuable. So, I mean, like, for example, in martial arts, you would get into these like tournaments and fight or whatever. And then again, in your first class, you're taught three things. You're taught how to punch, you're taught how to throw a side kick, and you're taught how to block. And that's basically all you learn in the first like couple months or whatever, right? Fast forward 13 years, you're a black belt, you're going for like world champions or like state championships, and you see all these people throwing like spin kicks and fancy jumps and whatever. And then you see the guy that's like he's actually got the title of world champion on his back, and all he does is just punch you and side kick you. But he's so good at those two things, right? So like that makes a lot of sense to me, because anytime that I would go to a tournament and just get my ass kicked, like my coach would always tell me, go practice your side kick, go practice your punch, go practice your blitz, practice this, but only focus on this stuff, right? And in sales, like I just did it this past week, because like I thought I had this account. I was 100% sure I was going to close it, right? They said no. They stayed with the incumbent. They signed another 3-year deal with them. I'm like, what do you mean my price was lower? My service was better? And they said, yeah, we have a better relationship with the driver, whatever it is, right? But immediately what I did is I went back to like our sales training, printed off all of our documentation, and just started going back through and reading everything again. I've probably done that 100 times in the past like 3 years I've been with this company, because you're right. Going back to basics is so vitally important. So great point there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's, I think, one of the reasons they say, you around the time frame that you hit this wall is because you get comfortable, you start getting comfortable, and you start veering off and trying to do it your own way, and you just kind of need that kickback. Okay, I need a freeze. Take a step back, and just look at everything that was working for me then. What's different now? And just kind of figuring out that way too has been huge. But I would love to ask you, I mean, you're tenured. When you hit a wall, what do you do to get out of it and out of the so-called slump?
Yeah. Sorry, I looked up for a second. I just heard my kids fighting upstairs, but my wife's got it taken care of. Yeah. So feel like I hit slumps more often than I probably should. But one of the things I do is I go back to my support base. And I think by you talking about your team, like that's super important too, because um, my situation is a little bit different because I'm based out of a twig, like a twig, just basically like a starting branch. So I probably see my sales manager, Chris, maybe once a month, if that. And the other reps, I don't ever really see them. Like I'll talk to them on the phone and we'll have like little teams meetings or whatever, and we'll chat. But they've been awesome about like keeping up with me. But I think one of the biggest things, I'll go back to my sales manager and go, hey man, like I'm feeling like this, and I'm wondering like, is there something that I can do? Like, is it possible to role play with you? Can we practice this objection? Because I feel like I probably could have handled this a little bit better, right? He's fantastic about that. Shout out, Chris. You're awesome. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I read, I knew I was going to forget the name of this book as soon as I thought about it. It's a book by Jeb Blunt, who, if you don't know Jeb Blunt, he's a pretty famous like sales trainer, right? But he wrote this book about prospecting, like specifically about prospecting. And I highly recommend anybody to read the book. I wish I could think about it, like what the name of it is.
Is it Fanatical Prospecting?
That's the one. Yes, that's a great book. I have a copy of that book, like underlined and notes in the margin and stuff, and like just like crazy like serial killer looking handwriting just all over that book. But one of the things that he said that really resonated with me is a pipeline problem can always be overcome with more activity, right? So like the age old thing is activity breeds sales, and that's true. Like, and that's what takes usually the hardest work. Like you hear people, like I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn, but you hear people use this cliche of, well, I like to work smarter, not hard. Like I'm not going to go hit every single door, right? Well, here's the thing though. As a tenured rep, like I know that the average turnover within the industry, just based on what I see on LinkedIn, is like a year and a half, right? So I know that by sticking around longer than that, I'm going up to bat, to use your analogy of softball, like I'm going up to bat against a pitcher who's never thrown a ball, right? Who has no idea what they're doing. And they may throw me your favorite pitch, just the curveball, and I'll knock it out of the park every single time, right? So to answer your question, like it's just about more activity, because like people say I'm not going to hit every single door, but here's the thing: if you don't go hit every single door, your competition will. They will walk in there, and you'll come into like a restaurant. You walk into like a little like just like a small rundown restaurant, but you'll see a mat on the ground that's one of your competitors, and you're like, how big is this account, right? Because people
Right.
they cherry pick, which I was guilty of in the beginning, because I was like, I don't want to go talk to that. Yeah, it's a restaurant. I want to go talk to them. We don't do this, so I'm not going to go talk to that person. No, talk to everyone, everybody, right? And just throw everything at the wall, because once again, the more activity that you're putting in, the more opportunities you have to sell, right? In other words, the more at bats that you have, the more likely it is that your batting average is going to go up because you keep swinging at it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love that. I love that point. I think that's great.
Thank you. That was a lot of info. I apologize. I usually don't talk this much on the podcast. It's best to have my guests usually talk more, but that was a good question. So let's transition into social media real quick, because this is a thing that one of the things I mentioned to you when you asked me about the social media thing is I said, just be yourself and make it organic, right? So what ideas have you had since that conversation? Like, I mean, when can we see on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, when can we see Kendall Anderson, a day in the life of a sales rep? Because I'm super excited for it. I can't wait.
I plan on working on it this week. I hope to do it Thursday. I want to do a good mix. So I would love to do one where I have full appointments all day and just film in between. I'm trying to figure out a good mix, honestly. And if I'm going to do it like maybe a week in the life, if that would be better content. So I'm still playing around with some ideas in my head. So we're still working on it up here, but
That's awesome.
if you have any ideas, continue to brainstorm for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, it gets funny because like after you and I talked, that's when I posted that video of like the when you ride along with that guy, right?
I saw that.
Yeah, so like it's funny because like you kind of inspired me to do that because having a podcast, especially when it's brand new, it's tough to get guests every single week. So what I'm committed to do is a podcast at least once a month, can release just one, but every other week, you know, in between that time, do something clever, like a little skit or like, you know, a little problem, or whatever. I sent that video to my parents, and it's funny because they both laughed at it, but they were like, I don't really get this. Like, why is it funny? And I'm like, you've obviously never been in sales and either been a sales manager or been the other guy, because I've been both, where your sales manager gets in the car and you're like, cool. So I have no idea what we're doing today, like at all. Just watch your sales manager's hopes just go, oh, geez. You know, but something like
Exactly.
that, like I think if you were to release something once a week where you're like recapping your week, what some of your challenges were, how how you overcame those challenges, you had some clever editing, maybe like a reenactment, something like that. Like I think that would be really, really cool to see because I don't see that in the sales world at all. So I think what you're doing is very, very original.
Right. And, you know, something that I've thought about just for my personal growth is just being able to track, you know, when I'm killing it, what was I doing differently then? You know, so when I've hit a wall, then I can go back and watch and see, you know, what was working for me then. What do I need to get back to doing that I'm maybe not doing right now?
Yeah.
Or, you know, vice versa, and watch how I've grown through being a sales rep. So I think that would be really cool, and just even for my own personal growth.
Yeah, absolutely. When you competed in softball, like, I know my dad did this to me, but like, do you have somebody recording your game? Did you ever go back and watch the aftermath, like the after footage, and go, that swing was ugly. Maybe if I just change it a little bit, turn my hips a little bit more, maybe I'll hit that ball. Did you ever do that?
So my father used to video my at bats or my pitching, and used to sit me down after some games, the brutal ones specifically, and break every single bit of it down and make me watch and analyze it. And that was probably the most painful, most painful thing. But you know, I mean, it ended up helping me, and it clearly got me to where I was
Yeah.
and where I competed at. But yes, that was a big part of it. It was, I mean, when I was in hitting lessons, being able to break down your swing and look at it, or even your pitch, that's huge. Just looking at your mechanics, and it always was very cool to go back and, you know, watch it when I was younger, how much my swing had developed. That's something I always loved, going back and looking at.
Yeah. That's kind of how my dad was too. Like he would let me watch the matches I won maybe once or twice. And then he'd go back and go, okay, you see this match where this dude like dislocated your jaw? I want you to watch this over and over and over again and make sure it never happens again. Like, and we would just
Right.
like drill over and over. Like, and my dad, it's so funny because like, he wasn't ever a martial artist in his life. He just understood the mechanics behind it and understood how to be a good coach. So forever I'll thank him for that. But for someone like you to do like in the life, or in the life, in the day, or like in the week or in the month or whatever, that's super valuable because as sales reps, we don't really do that. I mean, you could be the creepy sales rep and walk in with your phone and be like, I'm gonna hit the record button, beep, and you put it in your pocket, and now it's sitting out here like this. Not that I've ever done that or had any experience doing that. But like, wouldn't it be cool to go back and actually watch a real live sales call and see how like it's really done? You can go back and go, oh man, I could have said this, and why'd I shift this way? And like, I know how to answer that objection. Why didn't I answer it? Like, what was it about it that intimidated me?
Right. Well, when I was talking to you earlier on the phone, and we were talking about my ride along day with Allison,
Shout out to
Allison
Allison, by the
Abbott.
way. You freaking legend. I saw your numbers today, Allison. Way to make everybody in the company look bad. Congratulations. It's amazing.
She's a beast. She really is.
Yeah.
That was like one of the coolest experience. I mean, I would ride it along with her again, and I loved every minute of it. There's so much that I learned from her, and just seeing what a day truly in the life was before I even came on board, really, that was, I mean, I think that was the best thing ever for me.
Yeah.
I was like, no matter what happens, I am just thankful for that experience. And I think that was super beneficial for me to see, what was I getting into. And then once I was on board with UniFirst and did a second ride along, then I was like, okay, now I can relate it to once I'm actually out and about and doing it myself. And just taking little bits and pieces, obviously making it my own, and just seeing the way she does things and how they're different, but how things work for her.
Yeah. And she's such a great example of that too. Because I mean, when I talked to her, I got really nervous. Like, and you'll probably see like in my podcast episode, I stutter all over myself because I'm like, she was like one of the first like President's Club achievers to actually say yes to doing it. And it's funny because I remember being at training at corporate and seeing a picture of her and going, oh yeah, that's the LinkedIn girl that like does all the LinkedIn stuff. Like she's really big into that. She's see, I'm doing it again. I'm stuttering. She's fantastic. So yeah, but
She is.
having that kind of mentorship is super, super valuable. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'll touch on my team again. Like, they're seriously second to none, the best. My manager has put so much time and effort into me, and making sure I'm comfortable and making sure I can come to her with literally anything.
What's your
And
manager's name?
Sarah Greer, shout out.
Sarah, shout out, Sarah. You're awesome.
Yeah, she's awesome. She really is. And having her as my manager, and then obviously having Allison as my teammate, and then our other sales rep, Riley, he's awesome too. And it's really cool. I don't know if you're familiar with the Marco Polo app. We, as a sales team, we are on it actively throughout the day. Whenever we get a chance, we'll be typing in notes and on it and just talking about, what we're currently working on, how things went. If something went wrong, we'll talk about it, or just get anything out if we have any motivational speeches. So we really get on there and actively every day, and we're always communicating. And it's really cool, seeing and knowing and just being in the loop of what are my other teammates working on, and how can that spark an idea in my head of things I should go after in reference. And it's just really cool. And just being able to go to them, hey, this is where I'm at today. Here's my headspace today. And them helping me pull out of if I'm having a bad day, or all of it. It's really cool. So I love our culture at this Charleston plant is phenomenal. Our service team backs us up. It's a really cool environment to be in.
Yeah. I read another book because I did like a sales training thing in Southern California with a couple of regional sales managers, and they made us read a book called Career Warfare. I forget the author's name, but like everything in the book, I agreed with him except for one key point, and that was he said that I don't know if he was specifically referencing sales, but he said, in your career, when you have a measure of success, your coworkers will want to burn down your desk and like throw out your belongings or whatever and just like get rid of you essentially, which I've never felt working in sales. And because ultimately when it comes down to it, we're not really competing against each other. I mean, we kind of are like in a friendly competition, right? But in reality, I've always felt that my support system with my fellow reps has been second to none. And that's coming from somebody that like I was in a paramilitary like law enforcement academy back when I was younger, long story. But like there's definitely a brotherhood and a camaraderie there, but it's nothing like what you find in sales. And it's almost heartbreaking too, because one of the things that scares away so many qualified candidates, I feel, is the turnover rate. Because there's people that get into it that they just realize I bit off way more than I could chew. There's a lot of freedom that's given to me. I don't really know what to do with all this freedom, so I'm just gonna crumble and go to my shell and grab my phone and go on YouTube and maybe just go to Starbucks and that's it, right? Um, so how do you so like with you, how did you overcome that? Was that an obstacle to you when you first started?
Not when I first started necessarily. Anytime I got in that, it was due to a lack of having a good plan. And that's something that, I mean, I still struggle with today, is having a good plan and really sticking to it, and the accountability of that. And that's something that my manager has worked with me a ton on, and I've gotten so much better at it. And I still, I mean, it's one of those where I'm like, hey, Sarah, I'm going to send you my weekly plan, or, you know, we're on a system where she knows she knows I need to send it. It's not that she needs it from me, but I need that for myself and my self accountability to send it to her, and she'll look over and be like, I think this is great. Or she'll tell me, hey, I think you could tweak this a little bit, or even just seeing what I'm going after, and let's strategize, let's think about this. But just sticking to your plan is key. And that's something that I did learn early on. And weirdly enough, Marco Polo helped address it, because I would be in the car and talking through like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Or, you know, you get in the days where you're driving way too much
Mhm.
and you can notice it. So, you know, just in the middle of appointments for Allison, she would talk to me through, you know, how she handles it, and just seeing different perspectives on it, honestly. But that's Marco Polo has been accountability, and then also my manager, and she's been great, you know, adapting to everybody's, I mean, our whole sales team, we're all different, but she just knows, I mean, she knows what I'm thinking before I know what I'm thinking at this point. And so she knows like when to call me out and when to, you know, say, hey, let's reevaluate this. So just having that good like manager relationship has been key as well.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I've talked to people that have had terrible management teams, and it's sad to see them leave the company that I know and I love, and it's like, you know, I wish them the best, but ultimately gets sad because I mean, to be in sales too. I mean, like you and I are talking about how great it is, right? But one thing I want to really emphasize too is that it's very difficult as well, because ultimately we're not mind readers, we're not mind controllers. We can't, as much as we might like to, we can't control people to sign on the line that is dotted. And then we get commission, we go to President's Club, you know, I mean, there's so many times where I wish I could just look a prospect in the face and go, you realize you're making a mistake by not signing with, like you told me all this issue and all this other stuff that you're having, but I can't force you to drink the water, right? It's super, super hard. But yeah, like that's why I feel like your platform with your idea for your social media content is so vitally important for not just for Universe, but for the sales world as a whole. Because as I mentioned before, there's so many people that would be so great at it, so great at sales. They don't have the motivation to step into it because they think it's going to be selling knives or selling pest control or something else, right?
Right.
It's not that at all. I mean, like it is in some cases, but I mean, with the transparency of social media has been great for us because it's made a lot of other sales companies accountable for some of the shady practices that used to go down. That doesn't go down anymore because people will go on Rep Review, or they go on Glassdoor, or they go on LinkedIn. They'll reach out to somebody that's been in that position, and they'll like actually ask them like, hey, what was your experience? And they'll either get absolutely not, don't work there, right? Or they'll say, yeah, go check out Kendall's page on YouTube. Go and subscribe to it first. Subscribe, very important. By the way, if you haven't already done it, click the subscribe button right here, right there. No, this one right there. Perfect. Okay, good job. Like, and it will give them some insight. It's just more transparency that can't hurt anyone. That's my opinion. So
Absolutely. And I definitely need to step up my social media game for sure. And looking at Allison's, I think I mean, she is as real as it gets.
oh yeah.
And that people love that about her. And that's,
Mhm.
what makes her so successful. And people love the raw, genuine content,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're curious too. Like I remember when I first saw Allison Abbott's stuff on LinkedIn, like I was like, wow, she really enjoys what she's doing. And it's funny because I look at our competitors or I look at other job markets, I look at other sales companies and stuff, and I don't see the same culture being shown or being brought out, right? Whether or not that's like a company thing, because I know that there are some sales managers and some like general managers out there that would be like, don't post, don't put anything on there. Luckily, I haven't had any of that come back at me because I think what we're putting out is very positive. Like, and it is very, very genuine. It's very organic and it's very realistic, right? I mean, and it's weird too, because as salespeople, it's not just about putting your name out there as your brand or some kind of recognition from like within your company. It's also about connecting with other people. Like I wrote an article titled "My Battle with Imposter Syndrome," and I can't remember her last name, but Bobby, who is a psychologist, she actually commented and sent me a private message and said, "Hey, would you mind jumping on my podcast? I'd like to like evaluate you on the podcast and like talk to you about this." It was super helpful and really helped me understand why I am the way that I am. And had I not put stuff on social media, like and made myself available, I never would have made that connection ever.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, it just goes to show, the connections that you make by putting yourself out there, and you never know who's watching,
Yeah.
and how it will pay dividends in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I'm super excited. I know it's been an hour already. Went by fast.
It flew by.
It's so crazy. Other questions, comments, anything else you want to bring up?
Do you have any advice for me as a newer sales rep?
Ooh, advice. Hmm. Without getting too into the internal sales process, I'll say this. You, with putting your stuff on social media and with becoming more transparent, what's going to start happening is you're going to start getting recruiters that will reach out to you like crazy, because LinkedIn's like their hunting ground apparently. I mean, they'll come out from everywhere. And I would tell you this, like I've talked to people like Bill Wise, I've talked to people like Allison Abbott, I've talked to people like Jason Parody, and I've asked all three of them, like, why do you not go on to something else? There's two basic schools of thought on why people leave, right? Number one is people leave for the promise of more money, more grandeur, more accolades, more like awards, all this stuff. And there are some companies that can offer those things, right? But there is something to be said about being an expert in your craft and being the absolute best. Because from my standpoint, like having four kids, having a wife, right? Stability to me is everything, which is funny because I have a career in sales, which most people are like, it's like peaks and valleys, which it is. It 100% is. But when you understand that that's the way that your life is going, and you understand your process to the T, you understand your product, and what's more is the company takes very, very good care of you. Kind of get to a long way to answer your question. Like I would say focus on becoming an expert in what you do, like be the absolute best. And you know that as an athlete, that's why it's important, right? That's why you had recruiters reach out to you from like different universities, and they wanted to take you on as a player because you were perfect at what you did, right? Nobody else was better. That's the advice I would give you, is really, really lean heavily on the process, lean heavily on the product, know everything there is to know about the product, right? But also the way that that product will, what's the word I'm looking for? The way that it concerns the customer, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Yeah.
Oh,
And
thank you.
touching on that, like just being a true consultant in what you do, that's one of the biggest things I've learned from Allison is, and she gets so much respect. And sometimes it is just, you know, hey, this doesn't make sense for you guys right now. Let's stay in touch. And
yeah,
that means so much to people, just being genuine in that regard as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing I would tell you about being new in sales is like, you are going to come across those customers who you kind of know in the back of your mind that this isn't the right product, this isn't the right program for them. But it's so enticing because you're new and you want a deal, and maybe you've had a 0 week last week or the week before, and now you're coming up on your third 0 week, and you're like, I gotta get something. I have to do this, right? You build so much more credibility within your territory by saying no to a customer and saying, this doesn't make sense for you. I wouldn't offer this to you because, and then just explain to them why. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, I'm super excited to see your channel like just blow up. I'm super excited to see your LinkedIn page blow up and your videos. I can't wait to see those. Just so you know, if you commit to a week, I'm going to text you every week and be like, where's your video? Where's it at?
I know, now that I put it out here, I absolutely have to do it.
Let me tell you, you have so many people watching the show. All 38 of my subscribers are now going to expect it. So if you don't do it, you'll let down all 38 of them. They will send me a private message and say, how come Kendall didn't do this?
It's going to be that accountability. So now I'm going to do it. For sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm stoked. Well, guys, thank you again for tuning in to Stop Interviewing, Start Selling. If you want to connect with Kendall Anderson on LinkedIn, just type in her name, which is right over there, Kendall Anderson. Yep.
That's
right.
Right.
Instagram, do you have Instagram, Facebook, any of that stuff? Okay.
All of it.
Perfect. So reach out to her, tell her you demand to see those videos every week. You want to see them. And guys, thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure.